Someday. All right. Thanks everyone for joining us for this panel. I'm Kirsten. I am the GPLEX director at the Economy League. This is part of a two-part session. First, we're going to start with a panel for our GPLEX360 event. And then on July 28th, we're going to be headed to West Kensington and Kensington to go visit some sites in person. So you can sign up for that too, or we'll include the link. But today we wanted to talk to three experts who are working in this area and with businesses around Philadelphia and business corridors to talk about some of the most pressing and interesting projects in their service areas. So I will pass it over to Mike.
Thanks, Kirsten. Well, I have the opportunity today to lead this panel. My name is Mike Shields. I am the research director at the Economy League of Greater Philadelphia. And we really have a unique opportunity today to talk to some very, very smart people kind of working across, very unique community-oriented programming around focusing on sort of place-based approaches to solving sort of our pervasive issues that occur in Philadelphia right now, both sort of long-term structural issues as well as sort of, impacts from the COVID-19 pandemic. So I wanted to go around, let everyone kind of introduce themselves and talk a little bit about your program. So Jonathan, I want to start with you. You're on mute right now.
So that explains a lot. My name is Jonathan Arrieta, and I work at Impact Services. I'm a long-term resident in the Kensington area. I grew up here, was raised here. And Impact Services focuses on jobs, homes, and community. But yeah, I work with Impact. I was a quarter manager for a long time. Now I'm the project manager. So.
Great. Let's jump to Ashley next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ashley Feuer-Edwards. I'm a consultant, and I've been working for the past several years on sort of researching and then developing and launching and now providing a lot of management and fundraising for the Kensington Community Resilience Fund. The Kensington Community Resilience Fund is a participatory fund. It's a pooled fund with a number of regional funders, and we call it like a public-private community partnership. So we have I work with the city of Philadelphia, who's sort of the champion and lead sponsor behind this work. And then we partner with funders, and most importantly, we partner with community providers and civic leaders and residents on actually running and operating the fund. So we, focus a lot on quality of life issues in the Kensington, Harrogate, and Fairhill communities.
Great. And Jamie?
Hello, my name is Jamie Shanker-Passero. I am the Director of Programs for the Temple Small Business Development Center. We are a program funded by the Small Business Administration, and we help small businesses start and grow, and we cover Philadelphia, Lower Bucks, and Eastern Montgomery County. Relevant to today's conversation, we are targeting corridors, businesses on corridors more specifically with a collaboration with PACDC.
Great. So thinking about the populations that you each are working with, because you're all kind of coming at the sort of these issues of community development and different perspectives here, working with the community itself, working with institutions, nonprofits, working with small businesses. So thinking about the populations that you're working with right now, what would you say are the biggest challenges they are facing as of right now, as of today? And Jonathan, I want to throw it back to you. Let's start with you.
The biggest challenges in my area of work with the businesses on Kensington is a lot of these businesses been operating for years very unconventionally. They're not structured businesses. They're more, at times they're more like hobbies that people use to support themselves. It's I think that if they had garages, they would run these businesses out of their garages. But since they don't, they have, and the challenges in Kensington made the storefronts so affordable, so cheap. So this is their garage, and this is their work out of a garage, and so it's hard to transition some of those businesses from garage work to an actual business that works. And so it takes, and they've been doing it for a long time. So look, from a business perspective, that's one of the challenges. Community, it's a whole nother ballgame.
Ashley?
Yeah, so what I could share a bit, so as we were developing our fund, we knew that there was sort of a gap in resources to address a lot of like quality of life challenges residents were facing. And this was sort of came out of the Philadelphia Resilience Project, which was working to address a lot of the community impacts of the opioid crisis in the neighborhood. And so, we felt that there was this really big gap on quality of life issues. There was a lot of public funding streams going into addressing like opioid use disorder and homelessness services, things like that. And so, but in order to really then like figure out, well, like, what does that mean? We actually did a lot of conversations with community residents. We did surveys. And so, the priorities, and I'll say kind of what were the priorities for them, which kind of speaks to the challenges as well in that regard. So we had like 6 issues that really emerged that residents said were most important to them, and those were things like blight removal and public ownership of community ownership of public spaces and beautification of those, needing to be connected to resources, and providing economic opportunities. So whether it's through youth development, through workforce development, so many people get pulled into like non-productive, economies in the community. And so providing like better opportunities for people so that they have resources at hand. Public safety was a huge concern for folks. And then, community trauma. So really, wanting services and programs that would support wellness in the community. So those were, the issues that really were elevated among all the community partners and residents that we engaged to, really identify a focus for this fund.
Jamie?
I can certainly add on to what Jonathan was mentioning. There are many challenges that our corridor businesses are facing that became more apparent through the pandemic. When you have businesses operating, like Jonathan mentioned, maybe without ever forming as an LLC or a legal entity, maybe without really doing their business taxes, or maybe underreporting, as a consequence, they were unable to take advantage of a lot of the federal relief programs that other businesses were able to use, like PPP and EIDL. So there was a little bit more of an awareness, like, ooh, maybe all these years of doing things a certain way, maybe there's a reason to do things a little bit differently. So I think that timing is really right for some more interventions on these corridor businesses who maybe before were a little bit more resistant to saying, hey, yeah, maybe I do want to speak with a business consultant, or maybe I want to connect to my CDC. And that's the timing of our Save Your Biz program. That's kind of how we use that as a bit of an incentive and a bit of a trust builder, which is always a challenge when dealing with corridor businesses, or I'm guessing with neighbors as well. You always have to have some point of commonality and say, hey, maybe you saw what happened here, maybe let's build you up a little bit more. And like Ashley mentioned, blight is something that impacts neighborhood businesses as well. That could be a reason to impact foot traffic. So there's that connection as well.
Yeah,
Great.
I think there's like that. I just was going to say, I think that just being able to move freely about the community is, which I think a lot of people take for granted, like being able to just go down to your commercial corridor, being able to just walk, from one side of Kensington Ave to the other to get from your school, from your house to your kid's school. These are things that really impact people that we, often a lot of people take for granted, that you can just like walk to the, neighborhood bodega or Wawa or whatever it is in your neighborhood, but just to grab, a thing of milk or something like that, that these are like day-to-day things, and that impacts a business, it impacts a resident, not being able to just walk freely and safely in your community. And these were, the things that we heard over and over again when we talked to residents, just wanting that feeling to be able to access and enjoy your community, and have all the, general services that make for like the fabric of a nice neighborhood to live in.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'm hearing a lot of too is, and we're kind of, I was going to ask you sort of, go ahead,
Can I
John.
say something though?
Yeah.
Ashley, I just want to say, though that is a large portion of the challenge for Kensington, the bigger challenge is that these folks in the community they were raised in, like those have been realities for a long time in this community, and after a while you just kind of become like accustomed to this. But it shouldn't be, but it is true. People become accustomed, and they know they're able to see the threats in the air. After a while, they know when they can almost smell it in the air when it's about, the biggest challenge that they can't stop. So they can survive the drug dealing, they can survive the shooting. They can't stop when they won't be able to stop when there's this outside force coming in and taking over their entire community. So that's something that they won't be able to stop, and they won't be able to survive against. Yeah. So I think I understand that these challenges get us there, but the bigger challenge is this won't be their community anymore. So that's something they can't survive.
Yeah.
So why don't we talk about that a little bit more? Because I think each of your programs in a unique way is kind of empowering the community to kind of formulate solutions and sort of, work for themselves and kind of figure out these solutions on themselves without as much external outside influence, whether that community is the residents or the businesses themselves. So can you talk a little bit about how each of your programs is sort of promoting ways to empower the community to formulate its own solutions? Whoever wants to jump in.
We're Impact is very involved on the ground. Where we're I say we do more than what the call is, more than what the contract is for, honestly.
Mhm.
And I'll give you an example. Oftentimes we're not only helping folks find jobs or find housing and stuff like that, but we're getting calls after hours, and we operate like the neighborhood, very unconventional. I get a call from my CEO saying, hey, this guy's on the street tonight, what can we do for him at like 11 o'clock on a Saturday? That's that's very involved. So I mean, I think we're involved with the community. The relationship part is key in order to have trust with the community, and I think that's just the hardest thing for folks to grasp. And that's just you're gonna get the generic answer all the time from the neighborhood. What do you need? Well, we need safety, security, whatever. But growing up in a household, in Kensington, I understand the needs, and I understand that the relationships are important. I understand the needs as they evolve. But yeah, challenges are you're going to understand the challenges the more the greater the relationship is. And so I think Impact does a really good job of building relationships. We do a terrible job at letting people know how much we do, though. Our marketing is terrible, but the work that we do, and I'll give you an example. My first encounter with Impact was when I was 24 years old. I had my first child, and I, we were renting an apartment that we couldn't afford. And so I got an abandoned house from a guy that I met, and I said, hey, I'll take the abandoned house off of you, and in 2 years I'll figure out how to pay it off. And I went to Impact Services, and they had this appliance exchange thing, and I was able to redo my entire house, this abandoned house, with impacts, affordable housing building materials. But yeah, so a lot of great work, terrible marketing, but a lot of on the ground work, the stuff that really makes, that makes a difference for folks in the community, kind of thing. But I think that's what you were asking. I'm terrible at these things, by the way.
No.
I
Jamie,
can- Yeah,
I was going to say,
connect
Jamie,
to
can I throw it to
something of what
you? We were talking about relationships and sort of how that sort of benefits and empowers sort of the communities that you're working with. And it's something that you had mentioned before. So from your perspective, can you talk a little bit more about what your program's doing to kind of connect relationships with the business owners?
Yeah, definitely. And it goes to, it's living proof of what Jonathan is talking about. So at the SBDC, we work with businesses regardless of where they are, in what industry, how many years in business they are. But similarly, we are a nonprofit. We can do some marketing, but that's not going to bring these corridor businesses in marginalized communities to us. Why would they come to us? First of all, they may not know about us, but even if they do, they're not going to necessarily know to trust us, especially with things like building up their financials, which could be something that they feel very private about, or maybe they feel like we're out to get them, or maybe we'll report them to the IRS for not doing their taxes the right way. So with the Save Your Biz program that we've been piloting over the past 6 months, we are doing something unique, working with CDCs and corridor managers to help foster the trust there, to say, hey, there's a program going on. You'd work with a consultant. Maybe we get your taxes in order. Maybe we'd help you with the website. How does that sound? Let me come back next week and get you some information, and spend so much time fostering trust in a way that our SBDC consultants were unable to do. So that's how we've been able to connect with businesses on the corridor. Many of which have language barriers. So we are bringing in a translation team, which is something that we haven't done much of, since it does take a lot of resources. And that also helps build trust, to say, hey, we have someone who can speak the language. We're not out to get you. We're going to make sure that our business plan is translated into Indonesian, to really help you in a way that you've needed for a while but haven't had the tools to do. So trust, relationship building is the secret sauce of this pilot program, for sure. And we definitely would not have been able to connect with some of these corridor businesses without the relationships that the corridor managers already have.
I was to say, Ashley, is that the same for you? Because I feel like you're working in a world where it's a lot of sort of top-down sort of public funds coming from all different directions that you got to have to navigate through.
Well, it's a little different, but I think we've tried to really turn that around as well. And I will just say that, like, yes, impact works in so many ways that are sort of outside of the scope of what they're, done. Like, for example, I mean, Casey and the team over there have just been a huge partner to us, whether it's like just giving us good insight as we were working on this, and being on our community advisory committee, stepping up and like just being there for any, like so many organizations that applied for funding and don't have a 501c3, need a fiscal sponsor. I mean, really, there's been a lot of organizations, and they've just stepped right in and said, sure, we'll help this group, so that they can just even have access, and that's not like something that they, had to do. It's because they saw a need and they stepped in. So, I want to just give a shout out to that. But I'll say, from our perspective, like, I often think, and I've had conversations with different folks who've been involved, and it's like, well, with this fund, we're, have different philanthropists or different foundations that are putting money in this pot. And then we have residents coming to the table who are actually doing all the grant making. And so, for us, there's a couple layers. Like, yes, it was really important that, like, when we brought those groups to the table, that we had really good facilitators. For our residents, we do all of our materials in Spanish and English to make them accessible to, Spanish speaking parts of the community. We, make sure we have translators at all of our grant applications. We had to translate them into Spanish, so that we had people on our, residents who were reviewing grants, who, spoke Spanish, and that was the language they felt most comfortable with. And we wanted to accommodate that. So, those are like small things that we did, but it's important, I mean, if you can't be present in the language that you feel comfortable with, then you're telling someone we don't really want you to be there, right? But I think, you know, for us, it's like this question of, well, couldn't an organization, a funder, just like give a grant to an organization on the ground? And is this maybe cannibalizing from where they might do that? And I think sometimes I have to ask myself that, like, as we're doing this work, like, are we taking away? But I think where I always come out is in our process, and the fact that, you know, we are giving residents the choice. So like every one of the 40 organizations who's received a $10,000 grant, you know, we've put out $400,000 now. Every one of those organizations, it wasn't because some funder sitting outside of the community said, oh, I read these applications and this one sounded really spectacular, I want to support this. And it's not that there aren't groups that are doing that, but these were all read by residents, and they were the ones who said, these are the services that we want to see in our community. These are the things that we want for our children. These are the things that we want in our neighborhood, and that we feel like are going to help us achieve the vision that like we have collectively. And so I think, to me, that's really the power of giving people that voice in it. And that's, you know, I think the power of the work that we're doing. And we've heard from, like, we did an evaluation of the people involved, and, you know, 100% said that they gained knowledge and had a better understanding of what issues were in the community. They felt better equipped to advocate for themselves. So like, there's all that, you know, piece, but a lot of that was because we also, you know, they also built connections with each other. We heard a lot from people involved who said, you know, like in other contexts, like, you know, in at least the group that we've been working with, there's often like two sides. There's like sort of folks who are in favor of harm reduction measures. There can be that element, you know, like meeting more of the people where they are. Then there's people who are like, I just don't want this in my neighborhood writ large. Like, I don't care. And you can see that sometimes at community meetings, but like here, I think we really work to build the relationships and help people in the sessions and the trainings just like realize they're coming at it with a common vision. So like people would say literally, like, normally we're at each other's throats a little bit, or maybe kind of coming at things from a different way. But through this work, we actually, like, we see that we have the same common goals, and it's helped us to like come together, even though we still may be going about things in the way we execute our work. But like, I trust you more because I know that you have the same interests and you want the same things for this community that I do. So I think, I don't know if that fully answered it, but I think it does all speak to the importance of like listening to people, giving them a voice, shifting it so that they get to make the say in things. You know, that really changes the dynamic, especially with like funding where there's such a huge power dynamic typically.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we've been kind of talking a little bit about like best practices and empowering community, providing voice and giving them a space to kind of be their own decision makers to solve these issues that they're facing. Can we talk a little bit more about like what have we all found in our programs as sort of best practices besides sort of the relationship building, translation services, and really a second parter to there is, you know, where do you need more help? Where do you want to be amplified? Where do you wish you could do more? What's a pervasive issue that you go, oh, if we just had more money or more resources, we could do this and it would be X better? Or how do we replicate what you're doing across other areas, whether it's other sections of the city, whether it's sort of, you know, expanding beyond the city? Can you kind of speak to like best practices and what you need more of?
More money. Give us more money so we can give more out and we can do all the other things. No, I will say, I think that there is, you know, I don't know, mine, while they look like they're both thinking, I'll just share like a couple thoughts. I mean, I think, you know, what we saw was like in Kensington, there's a lot of really great civic associations. And I don't know on the business side if there's similar, like a very active business association. And I think like one of the kind of keys to success for us was that there were a lot of tables that were set. I mean, also because we were coming off of, this work was coming out of the Resilience Project. Like the city had sort of been working with like a group of civic association leaders, a group of like Impact was involved with like the CDCs and other kind of community development groups. So like there were a lot of, I think, engaged institutions that that you had people at the table. And I think that having some of those things in place can be really helpful, because we were lucky that we were able to step into a lot of tables where people had been working together, having conversations. There's a really like close-knit fabric, I think, in the communities that we were like working in. And so, like the civic associations are just like, you can see there's a lot of camaraderie there. So that, I think, though, is, if I was saying like what's an ingredient for success, it would be that. And I think also just really like being open and listening. Like you just have to really be willing to hear what you're doing wrong as well as what you're doing right. I mean, I really try to like, we really try to take feedback each step of the way and say like, okay, we did a first round of funding. What worked well? What do we need to change? Oh, our footprint wasn't big enough. Let's expand it because we're missing people who are really impacted. So like the next time you do that, then it was like, we heard we really need like capacity. We need other stuff. So we like build it. We had plans for this, but then we like really got moving on building our learning community so people could connect with each other and like build the community of all these organizations. So I think just as much as you can, like really listen, and like kind of have sort of these groups that you're kind of tapping into where there's spaces where people are already coming together, at least, from our vantage point.
And I would definitely agree with that from the business side. Not all neighborhoods and communities have a business association, a CDC with a corridor manager, a bid, right? So you can see a big difference in the ones that do. They have advocates, they have a source to connect them to resources to say, hey, the commerce in-store program might be a really good fit for you. The storefront improvement program, let's get a few businesses to do that and look how that could actually impact the look and feel of the corridor. That's not happening in the neighborhoods and the smaller corridors that don't have that. So just in terms of what money could do, that's a possibility. And then I was going to add about just in terms of techniques that are working that we didn't mention. We talked about translation. But I also wanted to mention, and I imagine that the other panelists might have some thoughts there, would be digital literacy as well. So that's something that we're learning from our pilot, is that a lot of these corridor businesses, maybe they don't have a computer. Maybe they're doing things by hand, right? So what we've seen in the pandemic is such a need to have more of digital literacy in terms of having an online presence. Maybe you need that to supplement the lack of foot traffic. So that's something that we've seen a lot of, and there are some barriers there. So more resources towards that. I've been trying to do some research myself to see what exists, and a lot of programs are not running anymore. We're dabbling to see, but I think for residents and for business owners alike, these skills are becoming more necessary, whether it's for your job or whether it's because you're owning a business. Understanding how to be online, understanding how to use basic, Microsoft Office, or could it be Google? So that's a barrier, but also a potential area that an influx in resources would be really helpful. And then the last thing, I know Ashley mentioned lesson learned and things like that, would be for us having the opportunity to do a pilot on a smaller scale and then grow has been very helpful, because we can't predict all of the common issues that are coming up. Like, we didn't realize how much translation resources we would be needing, how much of the budget would go to translation, for example, because we didn't know what businesses, we didn't know which businesses would be selected. And okay, we have French, we have Indonesian, we have Mandarin, we have Spanish. That's so exciting. Okay, well, now we have to make some adjustments and some tweaks there. So that was a lesson learned, and kind of the digital literacy was one of those things that were like, okay, well, maybe when we scale up, because we have to ask some questions in the beginning when we're doing our intakes and unpacking a little bit more about what they have access to and how we can get them access.
Jonathan, to you, any sort of other sort of best practices you want to talk about, or sort of what resources you would love to have or need?
Yeah, so resources that would love to have in Kensington when it comes to the businesses. Honestly, it's a lot more money to get Kensington to a base level where businesses are able to have the foot traffic needed in order to be, semi-successful, right? And so there's a lot of challenges on Kensington when it comes to trash, and just is not the corridor that you would imagine that, folks would want to go out to. It's even though it's a short-term solution, there's a bigger threat in the horizon. But getting it to a base level where folks can, go out and grab their stuff. So with that, it just means being able to bring in entire teams of cleaning stewards. Just because Kensington has become Kensington Allegheny has become the dumping grounds of the entire city, I feel like. And there's folks that would say that they would say, I, this is Kensington, this is permitted here. So yeah, I think that's all I have.
Okay.
Dollars for cleaning, dollars because it's just businesses are not going to survive if there's no foot traffic. And I mean, everything else has been the same, sort of the same for a long time, but the cleaning, the trash has been something that has grown tremendously.
Yeah, we hear the same thing in the, in the groups that we're working with and the residents that are involved. And, even a lot of the projects, like we had one of our projects funded was with the Harrogate Civic Association, and they actually did a pilot project to get like sort of really nice sturdy trash receptacles that they distributed to everyone in a certain several block radius. And I think they've really been having some good outcomes with that. And also they purchased more heavy duty cleaning supplies so that residents wouldn't have to go out and like use their own supplies to clean up on the street. And so they could organize cleanups and have some of that and have it be more not something that they're doing and like, okay, we want to do this, let's find scrape together this small amount. Like they had $10,000 to really plan that out and work at sort of a different scale than they might have been able to as a volunteer organization. So I think similar challenges that a lot of when we hear about like quality of life, that's like a big thing that a lot of the groups we're working on. Like another group kind of took a lot. They were actually doing a food pantry, Paper Mill Food Hub. They were doing a food pantry, but there was an abandoned lot next to them that just had for many years had a lot of, I'll say, nuisance activity. But you can imagine what kinds of things were going on. And they were able to use the funds from their grant to clear that lot and reclaim it. And they want to, plant a community garden so that they can actually have fresh food at their pantry. So, when you think about like, what can people do with $10,000, when it relates to these kinds of things, there's a lot that can be done, with, groups that are super resourceful and innovative in the way they're thinking about how they're running their programs. Engaging their, fellow residents. And sometimes they just need some resource so that they're not constantly, having to think from like minute to minute. And also, being able to compensate. First of all, residents shouldn't have to take this on themselves, but if they are, that there can be some, at least a little bit of compensation for the time that's going into that work for the people that are putting in all that sweat equity.
And just to add,
Yeah.
why does the Center City District look so clean? Why does East Passyunk look so clean? Because they have special service districts and bids. And if anyone watching is not familiar, the businesses, this is my crude explanation, but businesses come together and they agree, yes, we want to contribute financially to the cleanup of our corridor because we know that'll be good for businesses. So for some businesses, that contribution is really hard, right? So extra resources so that this bid funding could come from a different source, maybe that could be, or at least to start, right? To get them started. I think that would be very, very, very impactful.
Yeah. So Ashley, you kind of highlighted some a little bit here, thinking about examples of sort of the bright spots. I think one of the things we've discussed is sort of this area, Kensington, and maybe sort of the small businesses of Philadelphia, thinking for Jamie, kind of, we kind of hear the same narratives of, oh, there's trash, it's unsafe. But in reality, you're all working with communities that are well established, that are very strong and vibrant and connected. So I wanted to kind of end today in the last 5 minutes here to kind of, can you share some of the bright spots or opportunities you see with your populations that you're working with or from your program to say that, like, this is Philadelphians working real hard and doing the right thing and changing for the good. Change the narrative about these areas if you can.
Kensington is a very resilient neighborhood. I once had a conversation with someone, and they were making a joke about writing a resume, and they said, they worked washing dishes, and then someone who was helping them write a resume said, "No, you're an underwater ceramic mechanic." And I was like, "Oh man, that's it's kind of cool, just the idea of like, what it's or technician it was." So I think one of the biggest challenges in Kensington, it's actually the reason why Kensington is so powerful. The people in Kensington are so powerful. It's all these challenges have made tough people, and I've heard before they say pressure from within bursts pipes, but pressure from without creates diamonds. And these people have survived some of the most craziest things, and they have lived some of the craziest things with no assistance whatsoever. They've been written off by the entire city. And folks have in their efforts try to support, but it's so much need here, so much need that you can't reach everyone. I was lucky to be reached by the different organizations and partners and folks like Jamie and Ashley's, and your efforts, and all those efforts create opportunities, but it's just there's a lot more needed here. But yeah, I think one of the beautiful things about Kensington is how resilient the people are, and how, man, you can go through an entire day of suffering, and then at the end of the day smile and be willing to put your last couple dollars into someone else's hand to see them do better. So I think, yeah, some of the most amazing people are here.
I would say two bright spots that we're seeing in terms of the entrepreneurship ecosystem in Philadelphia. One would be, I think from the pandemic, there is a little bit more of an awareness of the importance of our local businesses. We've all seen some of our favorite places close. So I do think that the neighbors in the community are saying, okay, I need to make a little bit more of an effort to shop locally. And we're seeing more shop local campaigns, and we love that at the SBDC. And then the other is that we are seeing individuals transition from a corporate life to entrepreneurship, making their own rules and opening up on our corridors and opening up local businesses to say, this is the road that I want to take. I want to make it myself. I want to be my own boss now. This is the road that I'm going to go down, and I want to keep it in my neighborhood too. So we're seeing more of that. And that is what makes, I think, Philadelphia special, is that we have beautiful neighborhoods with amazing local businesses with their own flair and culture.
Ashley, anything else to kind of round us out?
Yeah, no, I mean, I would just echo that. I think that, I consider it a privilege to get to do the work that I'm doing. And I've gotten to know so many just awesome people who are working at different organizations, who are residents. And I'm just in awe of how much work everyone puts in. And just, it's like, I feel like one of my favorite days was just going out to Harrogate Park, and we had the launch of our fund, and it was so wonderful just seeing, all the different, it was also coming out of COVID. So it was really wonderful to, when we had our first round of funding, but just to get to see everyone in person, and so many, it's really great for us now to see like 40 different organizations we funded. And I'm just amazed by all the work that gets done and the stories and pictures. And it's an incredible community. It's a community that, people should want to see succeed. And I am rooting for Kensington. I think it's a community where they deserve to have it's a community of choice for many people, and they deserve to be able to live in a community that, has all the services that everyone should have. And so I just think it's a fantastic, fantastic residents, fantastic providers. So I'm just being a cheerleader here, and we'll say, put your investments and your resources in Kensington and believe in this community. That's my message. So.
Great. Well, thank you all so much. This was a great conversation. I think our GPLEXers are going to really appreciate all of your perspectives here and thinking about not only this community, but the small business community throughout Philadelphia as well. You've all kind of shined a light on a great community, a very resilient community that we've all kind of discussed here, and we really appreciate your insight and your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.